all searching for love. It's something we all want. It appears to be something we all need. People say it makes the world go around. What is this thing called love, and how does it really work? Is love just about passion, or is it more about compatibility? And what about commitment? Can love change? Can true love last? And how do you get to live happily ever after?
I guess it's distorted from what it's supposed to be. Often it's not a thing that you go, oh, this is love, but it's more like these are the actions of love in today's society. So, and I think a lot of people have different opinions on what those actions are.
It's action words, things of honesty, things of just really thinking about the other person. It's selflessness. Love is completely just being selfless and totally just for that other person.
I would describe love as something everybody wants and craves. No matter who you are, no matter how hard you are, you always want love.
To find some of the answers to these questions, I decided to speak with some leading authorities on love.
Well, I think we're very influenced by media, by, the notions of love that we see around us, like in the movies, like in the magazines and so forth on television. So I think that there's this sense that it has to be highly romantic, strong sexual attraction, and kind of that we're in sync with each other all of the time.
I love that you when that happens.
So, if our ideas of love are shaped by similar cultural influences, do we end up with the same beliefs about love? Do we all experience love in the same way? Dr. Robert Sternberg is professor of psychology at Tufts University in Boston, USA.
From almost the time we're born, we're exposed to varying stories about love through our parents' relationship, through the relationships of the parents of other children we know, through TV, movies, books, other media. And these stories interact with our personalities to produce within us a sort of hierarchy of stories that we conceive as being what love is.
So love is the story. But what happens if two people fall in love and have different stories?
One person may decide that love is like a fairy tale. There's a prince and a princess, and to them, a happy relationship is finding the princess or finding the prince. Another couple, though, might have a business story. A business story is a very different one. It's where they say, oh, the fairy tales are for fairy tales. A relationship is about having a house and a home and making money and maybe having a gardener and being financially stable and secure. So those two people would have a story that love is more like running a business. Or there are some people who have less positive stories, a horror story. A horror story is where there's a terrorizer and a victim, and each seeks the other out, one to terrorize, the other to be a victim. Now, everybody has a hierarchy of stories. So, for example, you might have a garden story at the top. A garden story is where you say, love is like a garden. You have to keep watering it and feeding it sunlight for it to exist. If the other person has a profile of stories that's fairly similar to yours, the relationship is more likely to work. So if I have a fairy tale story and my wife Karen has a fairy tale story, that's probably a good sign. But if I have a fairy tale story and she were to have a business story, it would be hard to make the relationship work because we both say we love each other, but we mean different things by love. So it's usually productive. Our research shows that couples are happier when they have more similar profiles of stories.
Our ideas of love are influenced by the media, our family, and the stories we construct about love. But how can we possibly understand our individual experience of love?
My theory of love is called the triangular theory of love, and it has three basic components: intimacy, passion, and commitment. And the basic idea is that intimacy is how close or connected you feel to someone, how much you trust them or they trust you. It's a feeling of friendship. Passion, the second component, is the hot component of love. It's the feeling that you couldn't live without somebody, that you really need them, that your life would be horrible without them. It's more like the feeling of addiction. And commitment is your feeling that this relationship is long-term or forever, that you're in it no matter what happens for the long haul, that even if the person gets sick or does something that you're unhappy with, you'll stay. And different combinations of those three components give different kinds of love. So if you just have intimacy, you have friendship. Just passion is infatuation or infatuated love. Just commitment is empty love. Intimacy plus passion is romantic love. Intimacy plus commitment is companionate love. Passion plus commitment is foolish love. And the kind that many of us strive for is complete or consummate love, which was when you have all three of intimacy, passion, and commitment.
Consummate love. It's a balance between the three components of passion, intimacy, and commitment. But how hard is it to achieve and maintain consummate love?
Attaining it is a little like losing weight. It's hard to lose weight, I can tell you from personal experience, but it's harder to keep it off. And similarly, it's hard to reach consummate love, but it's harder to keep it. The reason it's hard to keep consummate love is that the world has a way of throwing us unexpected curveballs. So we may meet somebody else who tempts us, or we may struggle but ultimately lose in our attempts to keep intimacy or passion, or we may have grown up in a society where commitments tend to be shorter term, and it's hard to engage in a very long-term commitment. So there are constant challenges to consummate love, some of them from inside you and some of them from the outside, is when there's a crisis, a financial crisis, or it could be a crisis of someone dying, a child dying. But we have to work to maintain it.
So, according to Dr. Sternberg, there are three components of love. But is there one component that's more important in a relationship?
Our research shows that intimacy, passion, and commitment all are highly positively related to satisfaction and happiness in close relationships. But if you had to pick one component as more central, it would probably be intimacy. Because without intimacy, it's hard to make a relationship work. If you don't trust the person, if they don't trust you, if you don't feel like you're friends, you can have the other components, but it's hard to make it work.
So what about passion? How does that rate? Is it important in a relationship?
Western society has probably focused more on passion and love than have some other societies. Passion, though, is important to relationships because it's often what fuels them, what keeps them going and keeps them exciting. And part of the challenge of a long-term relationship is to keep that passion going, because the normal tendency is that as things become more predictable and routine and sort of life gives way from being a very exciting beginning of a relationship to more the middle, the passion sometimes dies. So creating excitement, creating change, creating new shared interests are important for sustaining passion.
Okay. So we've talked about the importance of intimacy and passion in a relationship. But what about commitment? Is it really that important? I spoke with Dr. Pat Nola from the University of Queensland about the role and importance of commitment in a relationship.
One of the things about commitment is it keeps us going through the tough times. So there may be times when we think, oh, what am I doing here? This is too hard. But because I've committed myself, then I'm more prepared to try and work that through. Whereas if I have not committed myself, I'm not committed in a real way. I mean, I can say I'm committed, but if I'm not really committed, then I might say, I'm out of here. And that, I think, is one of the things that's going on in our culture, that people say, oh, this is too hard, I'm out of here, rather than going through the process of making it better.
Certainly when you first meet someone, there is often a very strong attraction that brings you together in the first place. And let's call that romantic love. And that's a great thing because that's what gets people together. But what we need to understand is that that's just the sort of the initial attraction. And what we need to be able to do is to convert that romantic love into a sustainable partnership. And that requires a different orientation, a different set of skills, if you like, a different level of commitment to really learning how to work with each other as a team, as a real partnership. And of course, that fundamental to that partnership is that romantic love that brought you together in the first place. Ideally, it also has other components such as shared values and even friendship. You know, just wanting to hang out with each other is a very important part of it that may not be associated with love as such, but is a component or a set of things that, part of a set of things that makes up what forms the foundation of a strong partnership. That's what's often missing, I think, these days. You know, we get the romantic love bit and we think we like that, of course, and then we end up living together or even getting married or even having children together without having actually formed a partnership. We're really still there as an individual, looking out for ourselves. And so when the going gets tough, you know, we haven't actually formed the partnership that's going to last the distance. So, you know, partnership means things like looking out for each other, not just for yourself, being able to put your own needs aside sometimes for the sake of the other person. Not all of the time, and hopefully you're both doing it in a reciprocal way. But certainly it's not just about two people separately living under the same roof. Some of our concepts of love that are less helpful, like the idea that it's based on a feeling or that it should be easy all of the time and not be hard work. I think that leads us to what you might call a short-termism when it comes to relationships. We keep looking for a better relationship or a better experience in a relationship because we think that what we're experiencing can't be right because it's hard work or because indeed you know, the feeling hasn't stayed the same.
Love is hard work. Something that requires time, energy and effort. I asked Dr. Sternberg whatever happened to the idea of just falling in love.
We speak of falling in love, and probably the reason we do that is because the passion component can dominate. So when you suddenly feel passion, it can be like a swooning feeling that all of a sudden, where did the floor go? You know, I'm falling through it. So it's not actually a bad term for the passion component, but for the intimacy or commitment components, probably growing in love would be a better term.
Pretty romantic place, isn't it? So, we don't just fall in love, overwhelmed with passion, but we grow closer to each other in a unique way as we experience intimacy and commitment. We become more and more aware that we are building this thing called love, and we want it to last. But how do we know we have the real thing? Can we know?
Well, that's a really hard question. How do we know if it's real love? I'm not sure that we do know in advance. You know, I'm not sure unless you feel that you've got, a higher power telling you that this is the one, or you've got some other way within your belief system that gives you that certainty. For most of us, I think we're not sure at first, and we are taking some risks to let ourselves get close to somebody, closer and closer. But I think as you do that, as you learn to trust somebody else, and if you've got your radar switched on for signals that tell you, well, it is safer to go further, that this person is reciprocating, that they are behaving in ways that are trustworthy, that are reliable, that help me to feel safe, and that they're letting me into their life, then I think you've got something you can start to progress with.
I think finding out when you're in love is a bit difficult because, well, particularly for us, because we were best friends before we got together as a couple. So I think it was when we just felt that we were completely comfortable with each other, in each other's company. We were just completely comfortable. There was no issues with, what if he thinks that I don't know, if I act this way, it might cause some issue, or whatever we did was completely comfortable with each other. So it's a bit hard to define when we both kind of really knew we were in love.
There are ideas we have that can interfere with long-term relationships. One is that the same kind of excitement and romance that we have early in a relationship should continue for the long term. Some people begin to lose interest once the initial excitement wears off. And if you watch a lot of Hollywood movies, you're especially susceptible to this notion that that initial excitement will last forever. Usually it doesn't. So I think that can be a killer of relationships. A second thing that can be a killer of relationships is the idea that the relationship will take care of itself. Relationships are something we need to take care of. Often as life goes on, once we feel like we have the relationship, that it's stabilized, we start devoting our attention to other things. Our work, could be kids, could be charitable organizations or whatever. But relationships need a lot of work, and if we let them go, we're susceptible to losing them. The third idea that I think can be counterproductive in relationships is the idea that we both need to be the same in all our beliefs or all our interests, that if we disagree about things, sometimes crucial things, then there must be something wrong. In fact, in successful relationships, people often have differing views. What's more important than whether you have conflicts or differences is whether you can resolve them. So the important thing is not do you have some differences, but rather when you have those differences, can you resolve them in a productive, peaceful, and ultimately constructive fashion.
When you look at any city, you can see that it changes over time. But does love change over time? And if it does, to what degree?
Relationships certainly change over time. Again, the question of whether love changes, I think, is a difficult question. I mean, the easiest answer is to say yes, it does, because it certainly appears to, or it feels like it does. But I think, many couples that have been together for a long time would say that in fact their love has stayed the same. It's just the nature of their engagement with each other, their degree of comfort with each other, or their tolerance of differences comes and goes, or their sexual libido comes and goes. So there's all of that changes. So whether that's love changing or not, I'm not really expert to be able to comment on. I would think, however, we need to understand that change is a very important concept to encompass when you're looking at a sustainable partnership in the long term. You've got to be able to allow the relationship to change according to the needs of the two people.
There was probably two main points in time where we had a lot of change. One's the obvious one when the kids came along. Everything changes and takes a lot of adjustment, and then, you know, after a period of time, you get back and you figure out what your normal is. But the other time as well is we went to live overseas, and, you know, moving into another country, everything changes so rapidly. You find that you depend on each other so much more.
Oh, I think describing the love that we share is a very difficult question. Oh, I don't know. It's very hard to put it into words. It's
like a blossom in the meadow on a dewy morning.
No, it's very hard to describe love, I think. I think in general terms it's hard to describe love because you've got that whole exciting new aspect of love, but then you've got the comfortable, I feel completely comfortable and I trust my husband, and like you've got that aspect of love, which isn't the whole, oh, I'm in love kind of feeling, but it's just the feeling of complete and utter trust and comfort and in your relationship. So it's a very hard one to describe.
Love. Maybe it's not what makes the world go around, but maybe it makes the ride worthwhile.